Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics. Welcome back to Foundation Paper Piecing Series 2. This time for October, of course, I could not resist the pumpkins, and something special here is in your kit. You're used to having all of the exact fabrics, of course the pattern, but this time we've added some pre-fused and laser cut shapes. So if you want to turn those pumpkins into cute little jack-o'-lanterns, you will be able to do that. Those are things we're adding to our pumpkins after their foundation paper piece. And if you're like, I don't really like Halloween, no problem. You don't need to add that. But if you're like, oh yeah, I've got those little ones that I love seeing come to the house and seeing their costume and how fun it would be. Two different faces for our jack-o'-lantern. We have a lot of fun. You can see we just pour our whole hearts into these designs. We're literally giggling designing this stuff sometimes of like, what would make our customers smile? So we hope you're enjoying this series as much as we are. You can see we're well into Foundation Paper Piecing Series 2. We actually started way last year in 2023 with a Foundation Paper Piecing series. And we weren't sure if customers were going to love it as much as we did. And you know what? You have, and I'm so excited. So if you still have a friend that's a holdout, you know what? Bring them along. Let them see this amazing process we do that really creates the most precise finished blocks, and you don't have to be an expert quilter to do it. That's my favorite thing. So as I said, your kits can include everything you're seeing, including your backing, your binding, and of course, your full color pattern, which is always nice. Sometimes patterns I'm seeing today are still in black and white, and I love being able to see color. So we're showing you the exact fabrics that are in your kit, as well as those precise cuts. Also included in your kit are the foundation papers. I love that. They're already printed for you in full size. You don't need to run out and Xerox those like so many foundation paper piecing patterns are. You also get stickers. I love that. I make a cut, I label my fabric. I make a cut, I label my fabric. It helps me stay organized, and it makes sure I'm grabbing the right fabric. Once that's done, get all your stickers from 1 to whatever number that is, and you can begin the process. So this is just a refresher of TSP, Trim, Sew, Press. And if you're brand new to foundation paper piecing, you've never seen this process before, what I'm covering today will not be enough to explain this process. You're going to want to go back to our first video in each of the two series, 1 and 2, and review that longer video. It's well over an hour. Grab a snack, a cookie, whatever you want, something to drink. The point is I'm going to take you through all of the steps so you can go, oh, I can do that. And you'll see why there's certain notions on the table. So this is just a refresher today. And as always, trim, sew, press. We just keep kind of repeating that process. You'll see me using something called an add a quarter. If you are going to be picking up some of the kits from the first series as well, be sure to get not only the 6-inch add a quarter, but also the 12. And we do have that 2-pack on the website as well. Reason being is in the first series, instead of doing quad, kind of a 4 blocks, it was 1 larger block. And sometimes those cuts that we need to make are longer than the 6-inch. And for that series, you're going to want to have the 6 and the 12. So I want to explain that. All right, so again, just a review of TSP. What's that business all about? Trim, sew, and press. So for the pumpkin blocks, there's really a lower section and an upper section. We'll complete the foundation paper process for both of those and then sew them together. Again, this is just a refresher. We've done most of this, but we're going to do this corner together because there are some kind of acute angles and for another reason, and I want to point that out right now. Whenever we're working on the interior portion of foundation paper piecing, wherever we see lines where we know we need to sew, this is on the inside of a block. We're always going to start a few stitches before, sew directly on the line, and stop a few stitches after. But when we're on the very outermost part of that, where we want to be able to trim all the way around, we want to sew jet all the way out so we're at least sewing all the way to the dash line. It just helps lock everything down so in the very end when we trim this up, and we'll do that together, we don't have fabric kind of flopping around, which can be problematic. So it'll be easier if I just show you this right here, for example. Notice how line B9 extends all the way to the dash line. We're going to start a little bit before, sew directly on that line and all the way to the dash line, and I'll just sew completely off. We don't want to stop right here, and for that reason, we added these lines to your diagram to help you understand. Keep going. Don't stop yet. All right, so with our add a quarter, the first thing we'll do, in order to trim, which is our first step of our TSP, we'll just lay our add a quarter directly on that line, lay that back, and then with the lip of the add a quarter, we flip that around. We lock that right on the edge. You see how that's really locked in? It's a very unique tool. This add a quarter is really quite brilliant in its design, and then it helps you know you're absolutely in the right location. Now that we've done that, remember that the goal for B9 is that the fabric needs to cover that triangle as well as a 1/4 inch all the way around. So I have my fabric here. So we can envision, all right, once this is sewn in, I need to make sure that that's fully covered. And I can see that's a really good spot right there. But if you're like, I'm new to this, I can't really envision it, then put it in place, kind of simulate flipping it over. And if you have covered B9 and a 1/4 inch all the way around, you are good to go. Once you're in the proper position, hold that, flip it over. I'm going to put a pin in. And two of the things I should say, that when I get ready to foundation paper a piece, 2 things happen. First thing I do is I put a size 70-10 needle. It says Schmetz Microtex in my sewing machine. This needle is so sharp. It pierces this paper beautifully. It's just a perforation. And I reduce my stitch length to about a 1.5. Remember that the paper is going to be removed. At the very end of this, we start removing paper. We want more thread in a given distance, so when we remove the paper, we're not unseating the thread that we just put into the project. So I have all of that set up on my machine right now, and let's start sewing a little bit prior, and then we're going to sew all the way off. If you need to hand crank that down to be in the right position, that's fine. So you can now, we trimmed, we sewed, and now we press. You could do either the clover roll and press. I'll just show you that. Sometimes I've been at those quilt retreats where there's literally a line waiting for the iron because not everyone can have their own iron. There's just not enough power outlets. So having the clover roll and press is a great option. Now, if you're at home sewing by yourself and you prefer a real firm press, use the iron. But I just want to let you know that that's a great option for you if you maybe are in a space where you're having to share an iron and wait. I don't like to wait. I want to get things sewn. My next one will be B10. Again, add a 1/4, pull the paper back. Don't be afraid to rip the paper if you need to get that exactly where you want that to be. Remember, we're going to be ripping the paper away anyway, so that's no problem. Once you have a nice good crease, here comes the lip of the add a 1/4, and we trim. Now, B10, same story. You can see this is not a difficult process. You just need to be checking, does that work? Is that position working? And again, if you're like, well, I'm not sure, put it in position, pretend like a 1/4 inch seam allowance, flip it over, take a look. If you're happy, lay that back, pin from the front, repeat the process. And for our very last piece, B11, trim. Flip it around. Make sure that's good and locked in. Put our fabric in position. Make sure that's going to be a good spot for us. Move that just a touch. Yep, there's my spot. Flip it over, pin. I'll start way up here, come on, and way off. And one last press. And now, of course, the trim up happens. I always have to clean up. That's me. I'm like, I got to clean up. I've got debris, stickers, but what a fun process. Grab any straight edge you have, and you remember that the more precise cutting you can do, the more that the top of this pumpkin and the bottom are just going to click together like a puzzle. Works great with a spinning mat if you have it. Again, a spinning mat is not an imperative in this project, but if you've got one, why not use it, right? Notice how we keep our paper on. I've made this, I don't know if I'd call it a mistake, where I've removed paper and then assembled units, and I've done it. It works so much better to leave the paper on. Why? Because when I join these two sections now, when I place this right side together, that line right there is my 1/4 inch. If I remove the paper from both the top and the bottom, could I sew them together? Yes. But now it's on me to find that 1/4 inch. And there's just something about the paper that adds a stability to all of these different fabrics coming in, all of the angles and all of the collision of everything coming together, that just helps lock in the precision. So as tempting as it might be to remove the paper of the sections before you sew together, I would like to encourage you to not do that. I have far, far better results by keeping everything on and then in the end removing. All right, let's go sew this together right off the edge and onto the line. Look at that. Is that adorable? And we like to just press that seam open, kind of distribute the bulk evenly. And of course, this is when you begin to start removing paper. And I often in those corners, those little tiny corners that my fingers just don't get into very well at all. One of the things that I've added to kind of my setup for foundation is the Gypsy Quilter tweezers. They just get in those corners where my fingers just don't reach. They just have these nice, long, pointy, they're just incredibly sharp. So obviously you're going to remove the paper. Now, if you want to go ahead and add that jack-o'-lantern face, and this is what they're cut out of the black here. If you have not done a lot with applique, simply give a crease, nice, good, firm crease, and it will release the paper. You generally want to bring the heat back for any type of fusible to a medium. We're so used to sewing and pressing seams on a full hot. But fusible webbing really doesn't tolerate an extreme heat super well. So go ahead and bring that heat back to that medium. Now, I would absolutely have all of my paper removed before I did this process, but just so that we can kind of show you how fun this is. And again, you don't want to add the jack-o'-lantern, don't do it. Well, that's adorable. Okay, we're gonna do that. I think we're gonna do that. Absolutely darling. And you have a different face, of course, for the second pumpkin. Of course, you'll get all 4 pumpkins put together, adding your sashing, your cornerstone there. And then as we did before, we layered our batting and our backing, and that's when we came in and we used our thread set to really just stitch around everything, and really, it just looks so embossed. And then, of course, you're off to your binding. So we had a lot of fun. I was debating whether or not to add the jack-o'-lantern option, and I'm like, oh yes. So this kit's just a couple dollars more, I think $3 more this month, just because of the effort of our team now having to produce that laser cut option for you. But I think a lot of us that have little ones and enjoy just the fun little dress up, enjoy having at least a couple of our pumpkins be jack-o'-lanterns. So I hope you're enjoying this series. I would love to get your feedback. And if you still have a friend that's a holdout, bring them along. As I said, even if they don't do it and they watch you, I think they're going to catch the bug just like the rest of us have. Be sure to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next month as we continue our foundation paper piecing series for November.